Hi. This week's parsha begins with the mitzvah of Bikurim and the text of Mikra Bikurim. A Jewish farmer who owns land in Eretz Yisrael will bring the first fruits to the Beit HaMikdash, and when he brings them, he has to recite a certain text word for word, exactly as it's given in the Torah. And the text begins with a statement of our origins, Arami Oved Aviva Yerid Mitzrayma, and this verse is a statement of our origins as a central position in the Mikra Bikurim. It's the first. It seems to be extremely important for the person bringing Bikurim, bringing the first fruits, to begin before presenting the fruits as an offering, to begin with this narrative about our origins. And the same verse has been taken and used in Haggadah Shel Pesach, which is where I think most of us are very familiar with it, as again being part of the story of the Jewish people, beginning our story, we begin with the sort of the darker side of our history, which is of which Aramea Vedavi is part. In order to understand why this verse has been selected for prominence in these two occasions in particular, we have to say something about what it means. What does Aramea Vedavi actually mean? So, as I said, we're mostly familiar with this pasuk from the Haggadah, where we actually read the Midrash, in which the verb oved is taken to be a transitive verb. The subject is Arami, who is identified with Lavan Harami, Yaakov's father-in-law, and Avi is our forefather Yaakov, and the sentence is taken to say that Arami, Lavan, wanted to destroy Yaakov completely. But Ibn Ezra points out, and I think that most, no, not all Meforshim, but most agree with him in principle, that this is not the literal meaning, the simple Hebrew meaning, because oved is not a transitive verb. It's a stative intransitive verb, meaning to get lost, to be wandering. And so his interpretation, which again is accepted by biblical scholars, and is that the subject of the sentence is Arami. Let's put it this way: that the sentence means my father was a wandering Aramean. My father was someone from Aram who was lost, who was wandering around, homeless. And what does this mean in particular in the context of Yaakov's life? Well, it's interesting that Ibn Ezra tells us that he thinks what it means is that Yaakov was penniless. Yaakov was poor. He had to take this job with his father-in-law for pittance. And it's interesting that this fits in. Ibn Ezra says that Yitzchak was penniless. That the reason that Yitzchak had to ask Esav to go out and hunt some food for him was because he didn't have any money to buy food. So this idea that Avram Ibn Ezra is always finding at least reasons to find that Yitzchak and Yaakov were destitute is interesting. Of course, Avram, the Torah tells us that he was very wealthy. I think it reflects in a way his own financial situation. But his interpretation of Arami Oved is that my father Yaakov was a wandering, penniless, a homeless Aramean. But as I said, some modern biblical philologists have paid attention to this verse and found in some ancient Semitic languages that none of us have actually heard of some interesting meanings for Arami Oved. Oved meaning like being, as Ibn Ezra says, a intransitive verb, but meaning more particularly a refugee, a political refugee, a social outcast, someone who didn't belong in society. And taking this into consideration, these this whole range of meanings. What it basically comes down to, I think, and the way it fits into the context of Bikkur Bikurim is this: that what the person who brings Bikurim says, and don't forget, the person, not everyone brings Bikurim. Not everyone is obligated to bring Bikurim. In order to bring Bikurim, first of all, you have to be a landowner in Eretz Yisrael. You have to own land and grow, certain crops, and then if you do, then you bring Bikurim. And so what we say, and if you read the whole vidui, it's our forefathers were landless, particularly Yaakov Avinu. He had no property, but now HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given us Eretz Yisrael, and I now present as an offering the first fruits from the property that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given me in Eretz Yisrael. And this interpretation actually fits fairly well the historical narrative of the Jewish people that belongs, that's found in the Haggadah Shel Pesach on the basis of the Midrash, and the Midrash it's also in Targum Onkelos on the pasuk that we read this week. That is to say, our origins are with a even if we take it not as the Midrash says that Lavan was trying to destroy us, but just that my forefathers were from Aram, and they were wandering without a homeland. But now, after Vayered Mitzrayim, after we have been put through the iron test of suffering and slavery in Egypt, and been brought out by Moshe, and the 40 years in the desert, and molded into a nation whose entire raison d'etre, whose entire rationale, whose entire justification for being a people is the Torah and our commitment to the Torah. Now, we are now a people. So we're going through the same basic narrative, the same storyline, but it's not how a homeless person became a landowner and can now offer the first fruits as a gesture of thanks to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but how a people who were homeless and depressed and downtrodden became a proud people with their divine law code to which we are committed, and which is the pillar of our entire existence. And this is on the zchut of being Am Kadosh, and people who accept the Torah. We have received Eretz Yisrael and live here as its rightful inhabitants and owners. You see, we are not the aboriginal inhabitants of Eretz Yisrael, or maybe even not the indigenous, as some would say. These two words are part of academic rhetoric, which, aside being used to justify a lot of vapid hot air, is also used to justify denying the claims of the Jewish people of Eretz Yisrael, and thinking that some other people have a better claim to it. Not true at all. Our origins are to the east of Eretz Yisrael, Evel and Nahar Yisrael, and the Torah doesn't disguise it. When Abraham sends Eliezer to get a bride from his cousins in Aram, he says, "Kim el artzi u'moladati telech." This is his home and this is his patrony. But we are called Ivrim. We are Hebrews. Ivrim from the Hebrew word meaning to move over. We moved over from Padam Aram, from the area that's now Syria, basically. We moved westward to Eretz Yisrael by command and promise of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. The indigenous inhabitants, if there were any, were Canaan, the tribes of Canaan, which, according to the genealogy of the Torah, are not Semitic at all. And all the other nations that have come to Eretz Yisrael are invaders. Plishtim, coming from the same Hebrew word is polesh, and from this comes this word Palestinians. All these words mean invaders. So there is no aboriginal or indigenous people today with in Eretz Yisrael or with the claim to Eretz Yisrael. We are here as immigrants who took possession of the land, buying it. Avraham bought, Yaakov bought, despite the fact that Kodesh Baruch Hu said, "I'm giving this to you." Avraham bought in Hebron, Yaakov bought in Shem. The Zionists bought all over. We still buy, and even buying and paying hard cash for the land is not good enough for some so-called human rights legal experts, but we're not going to talk about them now. We are the people whose origins lie in a different land, in a different culture, but through the intellectual effort of Avram Avinu and the response of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the promise of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the servitude we went through in Egypt and the Ma'amad HaSinai, became a nation who were promised and earned our portion in Eretz Yisrael. We have to remember all along that our existence as a nation, our identity as a nation, and with it, our claim to Israel, is only because of our commitment to Jewish values and the Torah. There's no other rationale, no other even definition of the Jewish people, and that's why we have to be on guard and struggle whatever way is necessary in the way we can to maintain our commitment to our tradition and to our Torah values. Shabbat Shalom.